So today we're starting our podcast and it's called The Mindful Cave. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Safa. I'm a youth worker for UCP, Urban Community Project. And this podcast is about, it covers the general topic of racism. And this is our first episode. So we're just going to start off with basic conversations between me and someone who's going to be introduced later. And have our views of racism and what we've seen and what we've experienced. But we'd like to first start off by thanking Corra Foundation for funding this. So I'm going to pass it over to the person next to me, who's going to introduce herself, and we'll start the podcast.
So my name is Maliha and I am a mental health worker for Urban Community Project, and me and Safa have our kind of own experiences and views on racism, and because we have, being two kind of Pakistani girls in Glasgow, we have quite a lot to share on the topic. So as Safa mentioned, today's episode is just kind of going on the general topics of it, sharing our own experiences, and yeah, that's what we'll cover today.
So again, welcome to the Mindful Cave. Our first kind of conversation is going to be around what is racism, which is a very general topic, but we're going to start off kind of sharing what it's kind of meant to us and how we see it, in a sense. So for me, I think racism is just, I don't think I recognised it much when I was younger. I don't think I understood what it was, and essentially I just kind of would see it as like, maybe not racism, but maybe I think like if someone were to say something that may be racist, I would see it as like, oh, that's just not a nice thing to say. I don't know, what did you think, Malia? What was kind of your...
I mean, I would say the same kind of stuff, not necessarily being racism, but maybe it might be like, oh, that person doesn't like me just as me as a person, not necessarily to do with the colour of my skin or how I dress or what my name is, but just because, oh, they just don't like me, that's why they're like this. Yeah. But then, like you said, becoming a lot older and experiencing in many different ways, I can now understand that that was actually racism I experienced, and it's not just to do with, oh, that person just didn't like me.
Yeah. With the things of like recognizing whether it was racism, like we're saying, it's very much, I think it took me maybe once I got older to realize what was maybe considered racism. I think it probably took me leaving I started wearing my hijab when I was 10, which is like primary 6. I think that's when I first realised what racism really was. Maybe like the names that I got called, or like I just realised I was now different because I had a headscarf on. And it was like, it just changed very quickly for me. Like before that, I was one of the only brown girls in like my whole school. But I didn't feel like any racist remarks towards myself. But I think as soon as I started wearing a scarf, I was kind of like, okay, so this is different now. Like this is what it's meant to be like now. Like people now see, the first thing they see when they see me is my headscarf, and that's how it's going to be. But I do think that's one of the first times that I recognised it as racism.
And I think, like you said, before, even though you knew yourself that you were one of the only people who was ethnic minority Pakistani, and maybe there was racism, but a lot more subtle, so you might have not realised that what you were experiencing was necessarily racism, but because of the stark difference of wearing a hijab, you could tell, like, okay, I can definitely see now the names people are calling me, it's so directed to this thing that I wear. That it makes it so much more obvious that that was racism. And then maybe, I'm sure you've experienced this too, like when you become older and you look back at what happened in primary school or high school, you realise that, oh wow, that actually was racism I had. And that wasn't just like a joke, or it wasn't just like something
Somebody
really
being mean.
someone just being mean for the
Yeah.
sake of being mean, but actual in reality it was just a really subtle microaggression of form of racism
Yeah.
that comes up quite a lot.
Well, I actually remember this experience of like, I had this friend in primary school and I was never allowed in her house, but she would come to my house all the time. And I found out later in life that it was just her parents were extremely racist. Like, I wasn't allowed to go in their house because I'm brown.
Oh wow.
All my white friends were allowed to go in, and like
wow.
anyone that wasn't visibly a different colour, they were allowed to go into her house and see her mum and dad, but I was not allowed to go into that house.
And how was that explained to you? Like,
I found out, to be honest, I didn't know other people were going to our house. I just found out that me and my only other brown friend who's Afghani, she wasn't allowed in either. But we had other friends and they were going in, and at the time I just didn't realise. I just thought maybe every time that I was going around it was busy or whatever. I don't know why. I must have come up with excuses myself probably. But I was only 10, so the only thing I thought of was like, oh, they're just busy. And then I found out later in life, well, she told me, she was like, by the way, I like, she apologised. I remember her apologising in high school about it. Like, I'm sorry you never were allowed up. And I was like, that's okay. Like, obviously I didn't know what she was talking about, and she was like, no, it's because my parents were like this and they just had different views than me and blah blah. I didn't even know, but thank you for apologising, like, you know, acknowledging it kind of thing. But yeah, that was a weird one. That was one that I just obviously didn't see when I was younger, but
and for you to be like completely singled out of like, and their huge assumption of like, well, and think about it, you're a 10-year-old girl, like what threat could you pose to them as a household? Like, I don't understand where they felt like they needed that boundary. And in that sense, you're like literally in high school, same age as their daughter, and or primary school even, and you're being seen as someone that's untrustworthy, and you can't be can't be going in. And you know, is that kind of your first memory of something happening like that when you were that young?
Well, again, I didn't realise until I was older that that was even a thing.
Okay.
Like, that was something that I needed to know about. But I think my first encounter of like actual racism was probably later. Well, I was about 10 and I was walking down Partick, and it was past it was quite dark because it was winter, and it gets dark really quickly. So I was, where was it? I was going home from like a friend's house, and as I was passing this pub, there was a game on, and a guy comes out and he starts calling names, and obviously not very nice names. He starts calling me Packy, and he says it across the street. And at first I don't realise it's aimed at or targeted at me at all. So I'm like, okay, whatever. And then I start walking. Again, I'm only like 10, 11. I'm really young. I'm in primary school. And then I start walking a bit faster because I realise it probably was aimed at me. And he starts walking faster. And I don't know if... To be honest, I can't explain it as like I was scared. I don't think I was scared. I think I was more just like, I just need to get myself out of the situation. So then I kind of started running, and I'm pretty sure he trips and fall behind me, but that's irrelevant. I just run, and then I go to like the closest biggest store, and I go in and I just kind of wait there for a bit, pretend I'm shopping, and then go back home. But I remember not telling anyone about it, and I don't know why. I just didn't feel the need to tell anyone, and it wasn't because like I was ashamed about it, or I think I thought just nothing would be done, so why bother? You know? Yeah. And I think a lot of things like that, for young people especially, it's just a hassle to report things, so they're like, why bother? Like, if something happens, it's just, hey, it's happened, what can we do? But I don't know. It does seem a bit... It's just a shame that that's kind of
the way that you're kind of conditioned to feel like, you know... like you said, the situation with your friend and her parents and stuff like that, that's a lot more subtle because you don't realise it. Whereas obviously this guy is calling you a racial slur. So that's so much more obvious of like, okay, I'm being targeted, or there's something that he's angered by due to me looking a different way or whatever. Yeah. And then still going through that fear, because you're a kid, you're like 10, 11, and there's this grown man who's chasing you.
Yeah.
And the fear of like, well, you know, it's fine, like I hid and he didn't do anything and it's okay, but in actual reality you carry that with you.
Yeah.
And then it's that kind of like part where you're just thinking of like, well, there's no point and it's fine, and it didn't bug me that much, you know, I got over it, but in reality it stays with you, and that's what you remember. And then it does put that fear in you later on. And I think it's like you know, different scenarios where, especially when you're a kid and an adult is doing it to you.
Yeah,
it's the hardest. And then I think like I don't know if this is something you related to, but when you're a kid, it doesn't feel right to complain about it because they're an adult, and you're like, oh no, it's okay, I'm just a kid, and it's probably, you know.
Yeah, although authority really probably scared me as a child. Like I don't take confrontation very well, so I probably avoided any situation about talking about it again. So
yeah, and it's been the same. Like, you know, I think for me personally, my first racist encounter that I could remember that was very apparent that it was racist was when my mum had asked me, oh, can you go to, you know, the post office to drop off this thing? And she was waiting in the car because the area where the post office was, she couldn't find parking, so she was waiting there. And I was like, okay, Mum, I'll go. So I was waiting in line, and bear in mind, I think I'm maybe 10 and 11 as well.
Yeah.
And I'm holding this parcel, and this guy behind me comes in, and I think as well he was under the influence, but not heavily drunk, but I think he was under the influence of something. And he just like asked me, he was like, oi, and I was like, I didn't think he was talking to me because I was just minding my own business. And he keeps saying that, and I'm like, okay. And I turn around and he goes, what's in that? And I didn't know what was in it because it wasn't my parcel. So I didn't, Mum just told me, can you drop it off? And I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it. I'm fine. So because of that, I was like, and I didn't have an answer. So I was stumbling because I didn't know what to say to him. He's like, it's a bomb, isn't it? It must be.
Of course.
And I was so flustered. Like yourself, I was someone who was really shy and didn't know how to handle confrontation, and I just didn't know how to speak up for myself in those moments that I just was like, I just like went back into the car, and I couldn't even stay in the queue anymore because I thought I can't stay in this space. And I think there was other people there, if I remember correctly. It's a bit hazy, but they just kind of all looked and just didn't say anything, but I didn't stay long enough to know if something were going to happen or not. So I just left. And I went to the car, and Mum was like, what happened? I was like, oh, it's too busy. They said come back later. But she could tell that I was quite upset because you could see the tension I was holding with things, but I just couldn't feel ready to share it. And I was like, then might be like, oh, Mum would go in and then she would say something to the guy, and that's confrontation, and then something will happen. It's just too
many consequences.
Exactly. What it feels like is consequences, because it wasn't necessarily our fault, but it does feel like, oh, I will cause this scene because I've raised an issue when I should just forget about it. And I hate that I experienced it, but I just want to move on.
I do think that's partially a woman thing as well, like a girl thing. I do think that we were talking to some of our male friends, and they were saying that they would totally just like act upon it. Like they would say something, they would be like, that's not okay, you can't say that to me, or like they would come up with something to say. I do think partially some of that is to do with the fact that we are female and Pakistani, and to talk out or speak out about something, it's just, it's not done. Like you don't do that as a female Pakistani girl, like you just wouldn't. But yeah, I think partially that some of that is to do with
the reason you stayed quiet.
Yeah,
I think so as well. And then as well, like when you experience it for the first time, you don't really know what you're meant to do, because you're just like so shocked by this experience. And I think as well, knowing that you've probably related to this, that we are Glaswegian, like we were born and raised in this country.
I mean, so, we speak in a way that a Glaswegian, like I would understand anyone that was born and bred Glasgow. Like exactly. I would happily have a conversation. Like I do think that like people in Glasgow are super friendly as well. Like it's something you grow up with. Is just people are in this community are just so chatty. Yeah. So you like you understand when people talk to you. It's like a different language, but you understand it, and it's just. And
being brought up and raised around it, like this is our home. So for us,
You would like to believe that you are Glaswegian.
Exactly,
like,
and as much as we might not typically look like a Glaswegian, at heart we're basically Glaswegian.
Yeah,
so
this
I
is
think
our life here.
So when things like that happen, it's such a reminder of like, these people see me differently. When in reality, it's actually more to do with, I've always felt Glaswegian. This is my home. This is where I was raised. This is my identity is Glaswegian. And I feel that. And as much as it is, we have our own culture that's different because of our parents and things like that. For us, at least at that age, our Glaswegian identity was much stronger growing up at that age. Yeah. So when things like that would happen, especially at a young age, I would be like, who am I? Yeah. Like, it's just like, oh, so that means
you off so much.
You should be, I should just stay with the Pakistani side of me, and that's probably easier because they're already assuming I'm a foreigner, so I should just stay that way.
Yeah.
I don't need to get into the ins of the slang of the Glaswegians, or I should be making friends who are also ethnic minorities. That makes more sense, clearly, because we're divided that way. But in reality, it isn't. It shouldn't have. Like,
it does make you feel that way.
Yeah, right? And it's just realizing that kind of impact it leaves you with not just the anger and hurt that you feel from this, like the situation you've experienced, but then the like
the identity that it's taking away from you, that exactly. You are no longer feeling part of a culture where you've grown up, because the person that would be part of that culture is now saying you're not.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just horrible.
And that's just based off because you look different and you appear different.
They don't know anything about you.
They don't know anything about you. Yeah.
They don't know anything.
They've just made a judgment right there in that moment, and then that throws you off.
I've had people that have said like, oh, I just didn't think you would speak English very well, and you're like, come on, I grew up here, like I went to school probably around the street from where you went to school, like it's so interesting how people see things.
And it's still the same, like as an adult, there's different ways that's incorporated in the work capacity.
Yeah.
As well, like, we both we have working roles in different ways, and that still happens where, you'll have people in your work life who will be like, oh, when did you come here? And you're like, I was born and raised here, actually. I've spent my whole life. And they're like, oh no, but really, where is it that you come from?
Yeah.
And I think what they mean is, what is your heritage?
Yeah.
But what it feels like they're saying is like, I can't believe someone like you could have this good of an English accent, or like you speak this well,
it's
or there's
like, how do you know what we are saying?
Exactly.
Like, they're like slow down for you, and you're like, stop! Like, I know what you're saying. Yeah. Please stop trying to dumb it down, or whatever you're doing. Just stop. Like, it's frustrating sometimes. It is.
And sometimes, like you said, you just have to bite your tongue, because then there's moments where you're like, it doesn't feel like an effort to make a big deal out of it.
If you're going to start justifying yourself, there's no point. There's just no point.
Yeah. And then there's how many times does that happen? And then doing it so many times is so exhausting that at the point where you're like, you'll just allow it. And which isn't good. It shouldn't be allowed. Like, you shouldn't be stuck in that cycle where you're like, oh, well, what's the point? But it does happen because it's so exhausting. It happens quite often. So that's why for us, there's a sense of desensitization when people say these things. We're like, oh, well, that's a normal thing. I heard that last week, from someone else, which is sad to think, but it is a huge part of our daily living, especially because we're not in a country that's predominantly like ethnic minority. As much as it's growing and there's areas that have specific ethnic minorities staying majoritively, like the south side, which is majoritively with ethnic minorities, still that encounter does happen quite often. So, I mean, that's kind of the start of the episode, just to give you a little insight of what we have to bring. You can tell we're very passionate about this because we have a lot to share.
We could talk about this for hours, but I think
that's a good start at least. Yeah.
But I think we covered a lot of topics. We talked a lot about like just what it means to us and our experiences and how we've kind of dealt with it as well. But we'll probably dive deeper into a bit more of this in the next episode. But for now, we'll just wrap up our first episode. But thank you for listening, and we hope you enjoyed it.